Acknowledge your feelings. It's not that you're not supposed to feel anything. I mean, of course you're going to feel stuff, right? But you are able to make the separation and say, okay, right now, I feel like this person is emotionally withholding from me and I'm mad at them. But I acknowledge that they're not, they have a role, they're playing their role well, they're doing their job. You know, they're not my ex-girlfriend. Okay? So let me separate that out. And then I can make freer choices, more helpful choices in how I interact with them. Okay? So this is where slow to wrath, to connect it back to this, if you're ministering to someone and you're feeling yourself going to wrath, you are having a countertransference issue. Because why are they bringing you to wrath? Okay? And so you need to ask yourself, what button is being pushed? Okay? And I need to pull back a little, because this is not my personal relationship, it's a different relationship.
And I don't think this is slow to wrath, but this transference, countertransference. It seems like you could also have a tendency, this person, you're listening to their story, oh, I know where this is going.
Yes.
It's just like this patient I dealt with 2 years ago, this is going to be the same thing I know, and you stop listening, and you stop probing, and you just...
Bam. Yeah. Yes, and that's where I think our experience is valuable. And if we're not aware of transference and countertransference, our experience can get in the way. Our experience is valuable. It's what we use. Actually, transference and countertransference can be very useful, but only when you're aware of it. And then you're able to make better informed choices, okay? Because sometimes this is like that other situation, and because you dealt with it then, it can help you deal with it better now. But that doesn't mean you stop listening and you jump to conclusions.
You don't want to protect that other person on that immediately.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay? Now, another thing to bear in mind, and we will stop at noon for lunch, so I just want to reassure you of that. Things to bear in mind. When we're imitating Christ the servant, we minister to the needs of fellow parishioners or whoever we're ministering to by identifying and referring them to possible parish, diocesan, and community resources when appropriate, okay? So in other words, there are times, again, we're a piece of the puzzle, but we're not the whole puzzle. There may be times that I'm aware that there are limits to my role. There's things that, like we've already talked about this a lot, right? There's things that I know I'm not qualified to offer. So, but that doesn't mean that I may not, it might be good to be familiar. Say, okay, what does Catholic Charities in our diocese offer? What, is there a battered women's shelter in the area? Are there, that kind of stuff. What are some community resources, secular resources, Do I know about a list? Where do I send somebody to the diocese to find a good spiritual director, right? Or to find a therapist, right? So these are good things to, again, you can't guarantee that they'll do it. It's not that you're, but you offer it, 12-step programs, okay? It sounds like this guy has a drinking problem. It sounds like this one has a porn addiction, okay? How, can I offer them and say, listen, I think there's a group that deals with this. They meet maybe here in the church, or maybe they meet at the synagogue or whatever, but here is the contact number, or this is the URL. You can look it up online and find out what time that 12-step group meets, and it's something to think about, consider it, right? And then they're free to choose to do it or not do it, right? But you did your job, okay? Because you can't cure somebody of an addiction. Like that's not even if you're a therapist, you can't do that, right? So, so notice this pericope from Acts. So the 12 called together the community of the disciples and said, "It is not right for us to neglect the word of God to serve at table. Brothers, select from among you 7 reputable men, filled with the Spirit and wisdom, whom we shall appoint to this task." Now, why are we going back to this? We did it in the beginning. Well, the leaders of the community discerned a need that they couldn't fulfill. That's how the diaconate emerged in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. So, they're a great role model there. They're saying, you know what, this is outside of our scope. Let's get people who can do this, or this already exists in the case that we're talking about. Let's refer, right? Another thing to bear in mind, and we've already said this, remember that we are a community of ministers. Be open to the expertise of fellow deacons, pastors, and competent parishioners as appropriate. I put that in parentheses for a reason. Obviously, we're not gonna, see, one thing that makes your ministry interesting is that you're kind of like, there's something that happens a lot in the church that in a clinical, secular, therapeutic context would be considered problematic, and it's called dual roles. So for example, in the secular world, if you are somebody's therapist, you can't be their friend. You can't do it. You cannot invite your therapist to your house for dinner. If you do that, it's an ethical violation. Not for you, you're not, if they go, they're violating their code of ethics. They can't accept your invitation to go to dinner. However, a pastor who does not go to their parishioner's home for dinner when invited is impoverishing and endangering their ministry, because they have to be ready to do that. It's needed, it's part of the job, right? You know, so it's a very different thing. Now what that means...
Are you going there as a pastor, or are you going there as, I've been dealing with you for the last 12 months, very personal, I know a lot about you now.
Well, no, I mean...
all of a sudden you decide to invite me, now how they invited me as their parish pastor?
Well,
or they invited me that
is there a difference? Before we even get to those specific nitty-gritty details,
okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to go to the more general concept that in a secular therapeutic relationship, it wouldn't happen, period.
Yeah, yeah.
You do not invite, or rather, as a therapist, you do not accept an invitation from your client to go eat at their house, no matter what.
Right.
In ministry,
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
And part of it is that's part of how we enrich our ministry. So it's good that we do it. But because we do that, we also want to be aware that there should be some sense of boundaries. So that's why I say here, when you're seeking expertise, what makes your role tricky as a deacon, even more than the priest, I would say, is that you are a parishioner.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and your wife are parishioners. You're fellow parishioners, okay? If I get assigned as pastor, I'm part of that community. We are having dinner together. There's a certain, but tomorrow I could get a deacon could get reassigned too, but there's a way in which there's more of an ability to remove himself, whereas the deacon, and by extension the deacon's spouse, this is your parish, not just by assignment, you know what I mean? So part of your vocation is to serve, to be Christ the servant as a fellow parishioner. You're representing both the ordained and, in a strange way, the laity, even though you're technically not lay when you're ordained, but you kind of are in a way. You know what I mean? You're straddling the fence in a sense. So what happens is, you should consult the ministerial, the expertise when helping someone. If someone comes up to you and says, I'm afraid I'm going to be deported, okay? I'm having an immigration issue, they're going to deport me. And I'm freaking out and I'm at my wit's end and I don't know what to do. And you're accompanying them pastorally. Part of what you may need to do is be aware and know, okay, let me refer them. There's somebody, you can refer them to an immigration lawyer, let's say, or whatever, okay? But
Holy Cross Ministries.
there you go, exactly. So you make that referral, right? That's how you serve in that instance.
What's the name of the ministry again?
Holy Cross, they're the ones that take care of it here.
Yeah.
Immigration issues.
But what happens is that there are times when that expertise could be, let's say, ask for advice. You run into something, you're not quite sure how to handle it. So you would go to your pastor, say, or you would go to another deacon. You could go to a fellow deacon and say, hey, Bob, I think this person who came to me, I think there's domestic violence here. I don't know what to do. How do I handle this? How have you handled this, right? So that's an example of, picking somebody's brain. Now, you also have to be careful because you've got to be confidential, right? So you don't want to say, I think Jackie is in a situation of domestic violence, right? You just say, a situation has come to my attention, or how would you handle this, right? The other problem is, you can't go to a fellow parishioner with that, especially if they're going to know it's Jackie. Okay? there might be a fellow parishioner who is a specialist, who's a therapist who specializes in working with victims of domestic violence. And she might have expertise that could help you. So what do?
Could you not ask if she's willing to listen?
You
And
could
help you directly, but where she may also want to intervene, then wouldn't you have to go back to your
So
person that came to you and said, I know of a parishioner that's.
You could say, you could either go to Jackie.
You connect you to?
Right, exactly. You could say to Jackie, listen, I think there's this issue. I know that Jane is very practiced in this, she knows. I suggest that you talk to her. Would you like me to set up for you to talk to, or maybe you just want to approach her? Probably it's better for her to approach her. Another thing you could do, if there's no danger of revealing anything, you could just anonymously, without saying that it's because of something that's come up, you might go to Jane and say, hey Jane, I have a question for you. Just in generally speaking, if I'm ever approached by a situation where there's domestic violence, where I think there might be domestic violence, what do you think I should do? Okay? That's okay, because you're consulting, but you're not saying that it's tied to any, you're just kind of asking a general question. I'm a deacon, I'm trying to do this better. I feel that this could come up in the future with random people. If it does, what do you have to say about it? What do you think I should do? Okay? So, you know, again, you want to protect, you know, your fellow parishioners as well. So there's a certain sense in which, you know, or even the pastor would run into the same problem. I can't reveal, what's shared with me any more than you can, right? So just things to think about. And again, this goes back to the role, but remember that our ministry is communal, and that there's nothing wrong with seeking appropriate counsel when needed. You just have to be mindful of how you do it, right? And be very protective of people's privacy and their dignity, right? So yeah, you can always go to someone and you're not talking about a specific case, you're just trying to, I could go to someone who's an immigration lawyer and say, listen, if people come up to me and they're having immigration issues, what do you recommend I do? I didn't reveal anything about anybody. I'm just looking for information to help me be a better minister.
Plus also the person who's ever, like the therapist or the victim advocate or whatever, they're gonna have their own ethical things that they have to follow,
Sure.
just as part of that title.
Right.
So they're gonna have a higher level of
Expertise.
yeah,
That's the thing. There's
confidentiality.
and confidentiality, but still, you wanna. It's like I don't have the right to, unless there's a mandatory reporting law or something. But I have to, I have to be mindful. I want to increase my knowledge base, and I want to, when necessary, refer. And I can put people in contact with each other, but it has to be with the consent of the person, and maybe leave it in their court, and that kind of thing. So, a couple of passages here. This one's from Romans, where Paul says, "I myself am convinced about you, my brothers and sisters, that you yourselves are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, and able to admonish one another." Paul is telling the community, because I know the Holy Spirit is in you, because I know you're members of Christ, I know that the Spirit collectively will give you the resources and the wisdom you need to know what to do. That's a real trust, right? And so we need to behave like that's true, And then Proverbs, plans fail when there is no counsel, but they succeed when advisors are many. Another good proverb. Of course, you could also say it depends on the advisor, right? There's a great saying in Spanish, "El que no oye consejo, no llega viejo." The one who takes no counsel does not reach old age. That's a great one. That's the kind of stuff like your parents tell you when they want to wag their finger at you.
Father, real quick,
Yeah.
I mean, we can get breaking, but this is a scenario that I would envision myself being in, perhaps more than some of the others. I certainly understand the role of boundaries being in the fire department, all those kinds of things. I understand.
Yeah.
But here's one that I think would be a little gray area for me.
Yes.
And so, like you said, let's say, for example, I'm a minister, people come to you as a deacon because obviously you're a parish and however, for whatever reason, he's a very good man, he's a priest, he's got to help me out. Well, you can have as much sin as I do, but that's beyond the point. So here's a deacon, let's go get Tom. So let's say, like Jeff said, I'm accompanying this couple who's having trouble with their marriage or trying to get married in the church and they're trying to work through some issues they've had, and it's taking longer than, let's say it's taking a year, right? But I know more about that couple than the average parishioner does, as their deacon to help them get to the sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
Then they turn around and say, okay, Tom, would you like to come to dinner? What am I going to dinner as? As a parishioner, as a deacon, or am I now blurred the line of, I've walked with you for a year, I know a lot about you guys, am I blurring the line of, you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Right? You're not there for spiritual advisor, I'm not a counselor to you, but I'm walking with you to help some things that other parishioners don't know about you.
I think what makes it, I think you wanna look at it on a case-by-case basis and maybe pray for guidance,
Yeah.
and also seek counsel from another person, another leader in the parish who
What
can
would you do?
guide you, because I think in ministry, unlike in the secular therapeutic fields, it is appropriate to have that, because you are fellow parishioners, so there is a way in which it's appropriate for you to break bread together.
I guess it depends on the subject matter.
Yeah.
Somebody who's coming to me saying, hey, I'm having trouble with my husband, and you know,
Well,
whatever.
and
Now,
the
you
other-
come to dinner, well, I'm not the one to be here, no, what do I know about your husband here?
Well, the other thing is,
Right, role.
the other thing is how appropriate is it to have an extended interaction over a period of time, talking about that, it's like, because other things come up, like if you're a man and you're dealing with a wife,
Yeah.
and, you know, do you need to be spending a year meeting with her on a regular basis to talk about her husband, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
So those are things also that you might look at even before it gets to that point, that you say,
Right.
okay, am I the best person to be doing this? And plus, if it's something that extended, that's not a pastoral accompaniment anymore. I think that's more, there might be
Yeah.
therapy, or there might be something else that's
Okay.
needed, you know?
So the clinical side is very cut and dry to me, it's like you just don't cross the boundary.
Yeah.
This is what you're saying, that Tom, it's sort of gray, it depends on the context.
Yeah.
What you're doing.
And I think pastoral accompaniment, more often than not, is short-term.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be, you know, again, I'm not saying that there couldn't be a special case where something is
Yeah.
especially, you know, like they're getting an annulment and they're trying to, you know, work, do I take the sacraments or not, and da-da-da-da.
Right.
But I think it's the kind of thing where typically there's a beginning, you know, it's a short-term thing typically,
Okay.
you know, more often than not. And if it requires something more intensive, then maybe it needs something more, and maybe a referral is in order.
Yeah. okay.
Wouldn't you also just invite your wife,
Oh,
because,
absolutely, yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
not saying
if
it
the
wouldn't.
wife is there,
Yeah.
it's gonna be more like
Sure,
friendship and
That's
less
true,
yeah, I would never go along, I would never suggest that, I'm just wondering, are you
Yeah.
starting to blur the line?
right.
It's very
Yeah, you don't wanna
cut and
meet,
dry for me for clinical.
you don't wanna meet alone for cocktails, you know,
Yeah,
like
I
in a
wouldn't do
dark
that.
restaurant, you know, I mean, obviously.
Yeah,
But
but
like-
dinner, yeah, my wife and I'll be glad to come to dinner, but then you say,
Right.
okay, am I starting to blur the line, if I'm helping you with
Yeah.
your moment, and is it the right thing, whereas some other parishioner comes up, I don't really know,
Right.
hey, Father,
Well,
would you
having-
like to come to dinner?
I think
Absolutely.
what Melissa said is very, very good, is that, you know, if you are gonna accept an invitation to go to dinner at their house,
Sure.
you're probably gonna go with your spouse,
Sure.
you know, I mean, truly.
that really unblurs the line.
Yeah,
Exactly. It does, yeah, oh, yeah, I can see
See, there's so
that.
many benefits to being a deacon.
there are. Well, I wanna say one more thing before we break for lunch, just one quick thing, to close the session and to begin, prepare for the afternoon one. So we've talked about listening skills and about the role, how to define the role of the deacon in pastoral accompaniment, the role and the task, the identity of, rooting it in the identity of the deacon as Christ the servant, as a sacramental mirror of Christ the servant. And we got into some of the nitty-gritty of listening skills and different ethical issues that can come up. Now in the afternoon, we're going to go into a form of, how shall I say, we're going to go into a tool that can help us assess how we're accompanying pastorally, called theological reflection. And it is an assessment tool that can be done in community, maybe with your wife and with other deacons and so forth and their wives. We're going to do a case study here together, but first, of course, we're going to learn what theological reflection is, what it's for, how it might be helpful to us, and then we're going to apply it, hopefully, in a case study, and that'll be the afternoon. So, so that's it. I think it's time to get some food in us. You know? And we go in Christ's most holy name. Amen.
Amen.